Yo ho ho. What up, Dow Mafia? Welcome to yet another edition of the Dow Mafia Report. As I just ended up marking my brand new drywall, I figured that it was time to go on ahead and give you guys an update of what is going on with the Buffalo Bills after we released our 53-man roster just yesterday. That is right. The GM with the largest in the NFL decided to speak today and address not only the Bills Mafia but the media as well, clearing up a lot of decisions that were made yesterday. And so while some of those were very surprising moves, Brandon Beane did end up making a lot of sense of them. And what we're going to do is we're really going to dissect exactly what he said during his press conference today. Before I dive into that, I do want to give just one giant shout out to today's sponsor, and that just so happens to be Tavour. If you love craft beer and you do not have Tavour downloaded on your phone right now, what the fuck are you doing? And so Tavour is this awesome company that legitimately allows you to scroll through some of the rarest craft beers on the face of the planet, select what you want, and then they will deliver it to your front doorstep. I'm talking revolutionizing the beer run. And what makes it even better is that Tavour is hooking up the Dow Mafia as well. All you need to do is download the Tavour app and type in code DONMAFIA, and they will give you $10 off after you spend your first $25. It's essentially like I'm buying you a beer, and who doesn't want that? So whatever you're doing, pause this video right now and go on ahead and download Tavour today. And so like I said, Dow Mafia, Brandon Beane ended up addressing the media today, and then also Bills Mafia in general, really talking about some of the moves and his mindset of not only him, but also the coaching staff and the remainder of the front office of what exactly happened. And he ended up easing a lot of tension, a lot of worry of some of the names that we saw leaving this team, such as Reid Ferguson, Jacob Hollister, same with Davis Webb and Jake Fromm. Where the hell are they going, right? So he ended up addressing all three of those names. Starting off, most importantly, was Reid Ferguson. In my opinion, when I first ended up reading that Reid Ferguson was released from this team, my initial reaction was, did you really get enough out of AJ Epinesa during that last preseason game where you think he is able to be a sufficient replacement? But then I started looking back in the past, right? Last year, for example, when we ended up releasing Dean Marlowe and Andre Roberts, and just a day later, we ended up bringing him back. Well, according to Brandon Beane, he ended up utilizing Reid Ferguson as a roster move. He wanted to make sure that Marquez Stevenson made the roster so we could put him on IR, and Reid Ferguson, as expected, is back on this team. Now, yesterday when I was doing my 53-man roster sort of review, if you will, I thought that it was because he was trying to restructure his contract. Little do you know, Reid Ferguson is the highest paid long snapper in the entire league. So I thought that that was going through Brandon Beane's mind, but at the same time, he was just trying to secure a spot for Marquez Stevenson, who in return ended up getting placed on the IR. So the Buffalo Bills once again are sitting at 6 wide receivers. Now, once Marquez Stevenson is able to play, now we have to start asking ourselves, and so who exactly is going to be cut to make room for him, or are the Buffalo Bills simply just going to ride with 6 receivers throughout the remainder of the season, and Marquez simply just being a healthy scratch or even being moved back into the practice squad? And so the second biggest news that came out of that drop of the 53-man roster the other day probably had to do with Jacob Hollister, right? And it wasn't even necessarily that Jacob Hollister ended up completely balling out during training camp. I mean, according to reports, he ended up doing decent, but the reason that he got cut was most surprising for me, right? Once we released this 53-man roster, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, we legitimately only have 2 guys on this team right now. We have Dawson Knox and Tommy Sweeney. I suppose you could say that Reggie Gilliam, he could be seen as a tight end or a fullback. Who the hell knows anymore? Great athlete. But we are pretty thin in the tight end position room. When Brandon Beane was asked, hey, are you planning on bringing Jacob Hollister back? Are you planning on doing an exact same type of situation that you did with Reid Ferguson? And unfortunately, it seems like that Hollister is not going to be coming back to this team, mostly because Brandon Beane ended up saying that the defensive line was particularly heavy this year with the final 53-man roster. And to be honest with you, I would tend to agree with him. I would say that this is probably the deepest defensive line depth chart I have seen on an NFL team in a very, very long time. So it seems to be that Jacob Hollister was simply just a roster casualty. And so I think a lot of people are probably thinking, oh, okay, well, since we're not planning on re-signing him, maybe we're finally going to trade for Zach Ertz. Listen, I'm not sure about you, but I do not want to ever make a video about that guy ever again. And so the media has just been teasing me for the past 4 or 5 months. But from what I understand, and Matt Perino actually ended up giving out a very good take on Twitter a couple of hours ago, essentially saying that the Buffalo Bills just don't look at the tight end position as most other teams do. It doesn't seem to be a massive priority with us as of right now, and Dawson Knox and Tommy Sweeney, maybe Reggie Gilliam, are enough for what we have to offer. I mean, if you just look at our wide receiver room at this point, I think that we have plenty of bodies that can make up for the lack of tight end that we have on this team. So as far as Jacob Hollister is concerned, Brandon Beane thinks that he's going to be re-signed by a team very, very soon and just look to have a very limited tight end room. And let's just shut the up about the Zach Ertz rumors. And so last but not least, the quarterback situation. So we all know, and I mean, this was not a surprise at all, Josh Allen and Mitch Trubisky are the two quarterbacks for this team. So there's absolutely no reason to have a COVID QB this year. There's no reason to have a third string quarterback on the roster at this point. However, it does seem that Davis Webb is going to be coming back to our practice squad at this point. Jake Fromm, not so much. And so waivers just ended. Jake Fromm was not picked up. Davis Webb wasn't even eligible for waivers. Davis Webb was seen at practice today talking to the quarterbacks. So it seems like Davis Webb is going to be our guy from the practice squad situation, and the Jake Fromm era is essentially over with. I'm very curious to see what happens to Fromm. I was always a big fan of him when he was in college, but we shall see. But it seems like Davis Webb also seems to be the guy that's coming back into the practice squad. Same thing with Antonio Williams. So a lot of y'all were upset that he did not make the running back room, but it appears that he will also be back on the Buffalo Bills practice squad. So Dom Mafia, looks like Brandon Beane ended up clarifying a lot of things for not only the media, but the Bills Mafia as well. Have no fear, our long snapper is back. Our tight end room is as good as it needs to be. And our backup quarterbacks, for the most part, let's not even worry about it. We have the best two quarterbacks in the AFC East. Let's be honest with ourselves. Dom Mafia, thank you so much for tuning in. Be on the lookout for some juicy-ass content coming up. The season's about to be here. Okay, you're going to see a Madden simulation here in the next couple days. You're going to see my video where I've already titled it, The Buffalo Bills Are About to Annihilate the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's still a work in progress. But regardless, stay tuned. If you haven't already, smash the fuck out of that like button. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. And before I let you go, you better always remember, let's go Buffalo.